Hello everyone, Howler here, and welcome to part 2 of Constructing Legends episode 7. As you can see, I did things a little differently with this particular Voltron video essay. Due to how much information I crammed into the script, there were some concerns that viewers would get overwhelmed with too much information and be unable to properly process everything I was talking about. Since I didn't want to redo the entire video or waste all the work I'd put into it so far, it was suggested that I split this video essay into 2 parts, released on consecutive days, to give people time to chew on each section of this analysis. That way there's no risk of people feeling like they missed something because I tried to cram so much into their brains at once. So if you haven't already, go back and watch part 1 and take some time to sit with it before you come back here and watch part 2. Because from this point out, I'm going to be assuming you've already done so and don't need a refresher, because this is 2 halves of a single script rather than 2 separate analyses. And with that introduction out of the way, we now return to my breakdown of what all the last-minute edits to Voltron's final season indicate the original cut was intended to look like. To briefly recap where we left off in part 1, the Season 8 episodes that give us the flashbacks to what Unrva's been up to since Season 6, the discovery of planet Olkarion's destruction, and the hero's second encounter with Zethrid were originally written for Season 7. Aside from causing glaring continuity errors, one of the major signs of this that I talked about yesterday is the impact that those episodes being part of Season 7 has on the pacing of Season 8. We would have still started with Season 8 Episode 1, Launch Date, where the heroes enjoy one last day of rest on Earth before getting back to the war, but instead of the Paladins spending a bunch of episodes on unrelated adventures before they actually confronted Unrva after learning that she's a threat, we would have skipped to what is now Season 8 Episode 3, The Prisoner's Dilemma, where the Paladins invade a Galra base and try to convince its commander, who they have history with, to work with them by investigating one of his missing scout ships. And then we would have jumped right to what is now Season 8 Episode 6, Genesis, where the team attacks Unrva's base in Oriond as she prepares to pull Lotor out of the Quintessence Field. While the broad strokes of the plot for Genesis were the same, there's evidence of a major scene being cut from the episode that's significantly important to the rest of the season. In the version of Genesis that we got in 2018, Unrva tries to sway Allura to her side and leaves her to fall to the ground when she refuses. Unrva then uses her magic to control Lotor's syncline mech and force him to land in front of her at the base of the temple. As the robot lands, the camera pans down toward Unrva, but before the camera can stop moving, the scene abruptly cuts to Shiro and the Atlas crew outside the entrance to Oriond. When we cut back inside Oriond, Unrva's pyramid ship is taking off and Allura is back in the Blue Lion, while Syncline and the Altean Robeasts are nowhere to be seen. Implying, to paraphrase my good friend Leaking Hate of Team Purple Lion, that despite all the armies, giant robots, and other advantages at her disposal, and the heroes being at her mercy, that Unrva just let the biggest opposition to her plans escape to regroup instead of killing them right then and there. Given that the episode established that Lotor's feelings for Allura are enough to make him hold back from attacking her, even as he lashes out at everyone else around him, heedless of friend or foe, what more likely happened is that Unrva tried to make him kill Allura. But because Lotor still loves the princess, he resisted, forcing his mother to withdraw because her energy was focused on keeping him from breaking her hold on him, with Merla and the Altean mechs helping to restrain him, thus giving Allura and Voltron time to get away. The existence of a missing scene is supported by the fact that when a later episode gives us flashbacks to the events of Genesis, we see a never-before-seen shot of Lotor's mech standing closer to Unrva than the last time it was seen in that episode. As you can see, the flashback shot depicts his mech standing on the opposite sides of the 2 pillars in front of Unrva, and both she and Syncline are in 2 different poses than they were last seen in at the end of Genesis. These are clearly 2 different shots of Syncline, and the context clues present a very clear picture of what happened in between them. Now here is where reconstructing the original outline starts to get a little more complicated. The episode that is now Season 8 Episode 7, Day 47, was a comedic documentary episode following the MFE pilots depicting daily life aboard the Atlas after the events of Genesis. And it was likely not part of the original season, as the limited animation and the focus on the MFE pilots in the episode indicates that it was conceived in order to reduce the amount of work the animators had to do as they were making the previously mentioned changes to Season 7. The transition from Hunk's efforts to connect with the Alteans through cooking in Day 47 to Allura speaking with the Altean pilot Tavo at the start of the next episode would seem like it was a necessary step. However, the fact that Tavo spent all of Day 47 refusing to speak to Allura out of anger toward her and the Paladins for betraying Lotor doesn't fit with how the very next episode opens with Tavo desperate to warn her what Unnerva's next move was before the witch could silence him.
Forgive me, Princess Allura, but we don't have much time.
I'm sorry?
Please, once Unnerva discovers I'm speaking with you, it will be over.
Slow down. What are you trying to—
Listen to me. Now that she has Lotor, she will use him to destroy everything.
It makes more sense for his fear about what Unnerva plans to do now that she has Lotor to drive Tavo to put aside his grudge against Voltron in order to stop the witch. And no other specific plotline from Day 47 is directly referenced at any later point in the final season. So after the attack on Oriond in Genesis, we would have gone straight into what is now Season 8, Episode 8, Clear Day, where the heroes spend a day at a carnival on one of the planets they visited during their propaganda tour back in Season 4, while Allura has a series of visions encouraging her to absorb one of the rift creatures that Unnerva uses to mind link with the Altean pilots. Like Genesis, Clear Day itself was mostly unchanged in the editing, at least in terms of plot. The only major sign of editing in the episode is the fact that the lighting when Allura is tempted by a vision of Lotor in the Atlas's lab was changed from soft pink in the trailer screened at New York Comic Con 2018, 2 months before the season came out, to a harsh, sinister green. But after Clear Day, storytelling patterns, signs of editing, and the details of the season indicate that we are missing an entire episode between the end of Clear Day and the start of what is now Season 8, Episode 9, Knights of Light Part 1, that got cut out in the editing process. Firstly, as I've repeatedly brought up in previous videos, Knights of Light Part 1 in its final form opens with the reveal that Allura was asleep for 2 days after absorbing the Rift entity into herself. When she accepted it at the end of Clear Day, she experienced a vision of Lotor telling her to follow him, and when she wakes up in Knights of Light Part 1, she knows with certainty that it can be used to access Unnerva's mind and how to do so. While Allura could reasonably conclude that Tavo almost being killed when he tried to talk to her was proof that Unnerva could see into his mind and try to kill him through it, she had no way of knowing that it was possible for the connection to go both ways, let alone how to use it. But as I've explained in prior videos, the context of her vision when she lets the entity inside herself heavily implies that she entered Lotor's mind during her 2 days unconscious, giving her a test run for how to use it to get inside Unnerva's head. This would be where Lotor would finally be allowed to explain his side of what happened at the Altean colony and whatever was really going on there that I talked about in my Lotor analysis. But there's also no way that the Paladins would have just sat on their hands for 2 days waiting for Allura to wake up. And as I've touched on in previous videos, the episode Prisoner's Dilemma, where the Paladins attack a Galra base and try to get the commander to work with them, contains multiple details foreshadowing a second encounter with Warlord Lon and the monster that attacked his fleet. From the hints that the creature survived the destruction of the ship it made its lair in, to the narrative parallels with Lotor's inability to distinguish friend from foe after coming out of the rift in Genesis, and the hints that it might actually be his supposedly dead General Narti. As well as the fact that the speech at the end of the edited version of The Prisoner's Dilemma where Lon says,
"Twice the Paladins of Voltron have risked their lives for me, and yet I question their intent,"
cannot be referring to his previous appearance in Season 6, Episode 1, Omega Shield, as the other incident of him questioning the Paladins' intent. Because in that episode, which centered around the Paladins attempting to protect a Galra base from Sendak's faction, Lon never questioned their intent, nor was he the only person they risked their lives for at that time. And since the Paladins are all wearing their helmets and standing still, it would have been easy for the people physically making the last-minute changes to the final season to swap the face under the helmet and the color on the armor to have Allura present in a shot that she wasn't originally part of. So that speech most likely occurred during this missing episode, after the conflict with the monster had been resolved and before Allura woke up. From there, we would have gotten what is now Season 8, Episodes 9 and 10, Knights of Light Part 1 and Part 2, where the Paladins travel inside Unnerva's mind in order to figure out what she's up to. As with Genesis and Clear Day, the overall plot was mostly the same, but there's a few key details that point to clips being moved around between episodes in order to conceal the removal of at least one major scene in Knights of Light Part 2. When Allura falls through the floor 3.5 minutes into Knights of Light Part 2 and sees what is presumably the illusion of the gladiator Robiste in Unnerva's mind, the episode abruptly cuts to the Paladins inside their lions ready to fight, with no explanation of how they did that. It's an obvious indication that Allura falling through the floor and seeing the gladiator was likely intended to be the cliffhanger ending of Knights of Light Part 1. And then Part 2 would have likely picked up with Allura and the Paladins figuring out how to summon mental constructs of their lions to save themselves. The fact that this scene occurs 3 minutes into Knights of Light Part 2 in the version we got on Netflix implies that some of the footage in the first 5 minutes of Part 1 before they began their journey inside Unnerva's mind was taken from the missing episode where Allura was unconscious. One we can definitely prove is the conversation on the bridge of the Atlas where the bridge crew talks about Shiro's arm wrestling escapades in Clear Day. Not only because of the oddness of them talking about the festival like they're just getting back to work after the carnival when the start of the episode established that it's been 2 days since then, but also because in the scene where the crew is monitoring the Paladins as they begin their attempt to enter Unnerva's mind, Kuran's chair on the bridge is visibly empty even when he's speaking.
I'm detecting fluctuations in Voltron's energy signature. Should we do anything?
Yet when the bridge crew are talking about the events of Clear Day at the start of that scene, both Shiro and Kuran walk in to interrupt them. Based on context clues, the scene that was likely cut from Part 2 was Allura and the Paladins reacting to Unnerva's memory of Lotor's melted body. Because despite the Paladins being clearly rattled by Lotor's return just a few episodes previously, they oddly have no comment or reaction to seeing a memory of what is supposedly his mangled corpse when they're inside Unnerva's mind. But there are moments of dialogue and character interactions in the subsequent scene which indicate that they were supposed to. Shortly after they see the memory and the team hears Unnerva's thoughts about how Voltron will pay for what they did to Lotor, they end up in a mundane field of flowers, which Hunk for some reason treats as a uniquely shocking, horrifying sight.
Whew, that was rough. Ah!
Meanwhile, Allura is surprisingly aggressive towards Zarkon's ghost when they encounter him inside Unnerva's head. The only other time she was this hostile toward him was back in Season 1, just a few episodes after she'd woken up in cryosleep to learn that her parents and her entire culture were dead. She wasn't even this personally angry and vitriolic toward him when the team was fighting him in Season 2, or when she watched him die in Season 5. So Allura's behavior toward him in Season 8 implies that she has experienced something inside Unnerva's mind that has left her freshly grieving and lashing out at the nearest available scapegoat. Which would fit if she thought that Lotor was dead after viewing Unnerva's memories. Especially because the episode ends with Allura unconscious just like she was at the end of Clear Day when she presumably went inside Lotor's mind. In the edited version of the next episode, Keith blames Unnerva for that, yet Unnerva's own dialogue in the same episode indicates that she needs Allura awake, indicating that she had nothing to do with it. Which likely implies that Allura has gone inside Lotor's mind in order to confirm if he's still alive or if he's truly dead. After the two-parter, the version of the final season we got went straight into the final 3 episodes. Season 8, Episode 11, Uncharted Regions, where we got the heroes gearing up to confront Unnerva and starting the first phase of the final battle at the ruins of Planet Altea. Season 8, Episode 12, The Zenith, where Unnerva traveled through alternate realities to reach the perfect universe where she could get her happy ending. And Season 8, Episode 13, The End is the Beginning, where we got the final battle between Voltron and Unnerva for the fate of all universes. But when you pay close attention to the details in the version of Uncharted Regions that we got, there's evidence of at least 3 more missing episodes between the end of Knights of Light Part 2 and the start of Uncharted Regions that got cut out of the final season. As I've pointed out in previous videos, Unnerva's dialogue at the start of the version of Uncharted Regions on Netflix echoes Lotor's words in Season 3 from just before he tricked the heroes into helping him further his own goals by doing something he cannot do himself. Which implies that Unnerva intends to do something similar in Season 8, especially given how her focus on Allura being awake later in the episode indicates that it's Allura specifically that she needs rather than the Paladins in general. Yet in the Season 8 we got in 2018, her plan in the second half was to hop into an alternate reality and live a quiet domestic life with replacement versions of her dead husband and kid. which had nothing whatsoever to do with the Paladins, nor was there anything about that plan that was impossible to accomplish without the involvement of the Paladins. And not only does Allura being conscious have no impact on Unnerva's stated plans whatsoever, but the sequence of events in the episode we got on Netflix stretches suspension of disbelief. Because that episode wants us to believe that Unnerva changed into her flight suit and got into her mech to start scanning other universes, then teleported back into her pyramid ship and changed back into her robes just to do a dramatic pronouncement about Allura being awake, and then got back into her flight suit and returned to her mech like nothing happened. But a few other details across the season give us enough context clues to figure out what was meant to happen. First, as I pointed out in previous videos, the melted bits of Lotor's body shown in Nights of Light Part 2 resemble the dead tree that Allura brought back to life in Season 8 Episode 1 launch date. Second, while Shadows depicts an entire legion of Alteans allied with Unnerva, none of them are anywhere to be seen when Karan, Sam, and Slav board her pyramid ship in Season 8 Episode 12, The Zenith. Then, when Unnerva speaks to the two remaining Robeast pilots after Merla defects, she expresses gratitude for how they alone remained by her side. And Genesis features a shot of Rebel ships launching from the Atlas and flying toward a trio of wormholes in front of what is clearly identifiable as the Altean colony planet, which the Paladins had explicitly avoided going to just a few episodes previously because the timey-wimey weirdness of the quantum abyss around the colony ran the risk of having them experience a decade on the way in while months pass for the rest of the universe. Yet despite apparently making the journey without issue entirely off-screen and even arriving at the start of Genesis, the Paladins never even acknowledged that they went there. What all these details indicate is that Unnerva needed Allura to heal Lotor and unfuse him from Syncline because she failed to learn healing magic when she cheated the trials of Orion in Season 6. So she allowed Team Voltron to board her pyramid ship and heal him, but after being freed from her control and separated from his mech, he rejected her, which not only led to Unnerva's plan to find an alternate universe replacement, but also caused all the Altean colonists except for the remaining Robeast pilots that weren't already in the Atlas's brig to defect from her side to Voltron's. From there, we would have most likely gotten a Calm Before the Storm episode as everyone recovers from the rescue mission while the Atlas goes to the Altean colony to drop all those defected Alteans off somewhere safe, using a safer flight path provided by Lotor to avoid all the previously mentioned timey-wimey weirdness. This would most likely have been where the characters would resolve their remaining interpersonal issues, like the falling out between Lotor and his generals, especially if Narti is alive for it as Randvake's monster, or addressing and resolving the love triangle between Lotor, Allura, and Lance, whatever the final outcome may have been. And somewhere in either one of these missing episodes or Nights of Light Part 2, we should have gotten an explanation of what Unnerva's new mech that she uses to scan other realities is, and why she apparently needs to fuse it with Syncline before she can actually start tunneling through universes. Because the version of Uncharted Regions that we got in 2018 never properly explains either of those things. After the Calm Before the Storm episode, then we would have most likely gotten the showdown against Unnerva and her Robeasts at the ruins of Altea that was depicted in Uncharted Regions and the Zenith. And that showdown would have actually been a completely separate episode, while the original version of Uncharted Regions would have covered Unnerva's journey outside reality depicted in the edited version of the Zenith. Because when you pay attention to the details of those last 3 episodes, it becomes clear that the content of them is misaligned as a result of missing scenes. Throughout the series, every episode title has been relevant to its content in some way, and there have often been multiple layers to it. For instance, the first episode of Season 5, The Prisoner, refers to both Lotor's position as a prisoner in the Castle of Lions dungeon, and the episode's main plot of Pidge attempting to rescue her father Sam from a Galra prison. Meanwhile, the Season 2 finale, Blackout, refers to the power outage that the heroes cause on Zarkon's flagship, the mysterious disappearance of current Black Lion pilot Shiro, and former Black Paladin Zarkon being removed from his role as primary antagonist. The titles for Season 8 Episode 12, The Zenith, and Season 8 Episode 13, The End is the Beginning, could still theoretically be made to fit the content of the edited versions we got on Netflix. The End is the Beginning can refer to the fact that this is the final episode, the end of the war being the start of a new dawn for the universe, and the fact that the final battle takes place at the source, the beginning of all realities, as Unnerva tries to destroy the multiverse. The word zenith refers to the peak or culmination of something, and could refer to Unnerva being at her most powerful and coming the closest she's ever gotten to achieving her desires. But it falls apart with the version of Season 8, Episode 11, Uncharted Regions on Netflix, because it not only doesn't feature any unexplored territories at all, either literal or metaphorical, but it also ends before Unnerva even enters any other realities at all. And it's logical to expect other realities to be the focus of an episode with that title, on account of both the history of the franchise itself, as well as the modern show's own lore. Because that title is a reference to the opening narration of the original 80s cartoon.
From days of long ago, from uncharted regions of the universe, comes a legend.
The first half of that opening narration has already been used as an episode title for the modern show, with From Days of Long Ago being the official title of the segment of the hour-long pilot episode that tells viewers why these robot lions are so important. So an episode title that references the other half of that original narration should logically be expected to tie into the robot's backstory in some way. And Legendary Defender has repeatedly established that this version of the combining robot is made from a comet originating from the gaps between realities, the uncharted regions of the multiverse, if you will. Therefore, it makes sense to have an episode where the heroes end up in a situation where they arrive at the place where Voltron technically originated from in the course of their journey. Especially when I've pointed out in previous videos how the final season shows us the heroes being stranded outside reality when Unnerva's tunnel into the next universe closes on them, only for them to show up a few minutes later completely fine with no explanation whatsoever. And as a side note, the titles of the final episodes being misaligned with their content in the versions we got is why I believe that there's a similar misalignment with the titles of Season 8, Episode 2, Shadows, Episode 3, The Prisoner's Dilemma, and Episode 4, Battle Scars. But that's a tangent for another video. Getting back to Uncharted Regions, traveling to the place where Voltron originated from isn't the only Uncharted region that would have been present in the episode called Uncharted Regions. Because there are multiple hints dropped throughout this season, and even prior seasons, that when Shiro and the Paladins combined Voltron and the Atlas to go after Unnerva, Lotor was meant to be right there in the cockpit with them. Previous seasons established the potential for someone to pilot their individual robots with a co-pilot, from Lotor designing the component ships for Syncline to be piloted by 2 people each, to the Green Lion spawning a passenger seat in Season 4, Episode 3, Blacksite, so that Pidge's brother Matt can ride along in the Green Lion and operate Voltron's cloaking while Pidge flies. Then in what is now Season 8, Episode 7, Day 47, Kolovon gives an unprompted monologue to the MFE pilots about the size of the teams he sends on missions, and ends by saying,
7 seems rare, but it could happen.
When by this point in the show, we had 6 Paladins in the main cast. And in what is now Season 8, Episode 8, Clear Day, the episode repeatedly shows Purple Lion plush toys being carried everywhere at the carnival, despite Lance reminding everyone that Voltron doesn't have a Purple Lion. Then, as I talked about in my first video, there are multiple split screens throughout the last 2 episodes where the characters are cropped or unevenly spaced in ways that imply the removal of an additional character. And when the Paladins appear before Unnerva in the connected mindscape at the source of all realities, their 6 silhouettes are spaced out as if there should be a 7th one there that was photoshopped out. So with all of these details in mind, we can conclude that before the editing of Season 8 occurred, Episode 11, Uncharted Regions, would have been the Traveling Through Alternate Realities episode, culminating in Unnerva being rejected by the alternate version of Lotor. And Season 8, Episode 12, The Zenith, would have been entirely focused on the final battle, with our Lotor fighting his mother alongside the Paladins. Then when they finally defeat her, he would have most likely fulfilled his words to her back in Season 6.
The end is near, Witch. I know you can sense it. If you beg for your life now, maybe I will take pity on you when the time comes.
And instead of striking her down out of anger and hate, he would have taken pity on her and showed mercy, choosing to let go of the pain she inflicted on him so that he could move on with his life and stop letting his resentment of his parents get in the way of him building more positive relationships with others. Because with Unnerva telling the Paladins flat out that their words mean nothing to her, it would make sense if what ultimately got through to her and convinced her to finally stop was meant to be her son's compassion. Especially given that she reacts with surprise rather than hostility when Allura does their little mind meld in the version of the episode we got. And there's some shots where Allura is off-modeling parts of the scene in ways that point to her being traced over Lotor, but they're harder to spot in motion and time-consuming to go over in video form, so I'll leave links to some analyses of those in the video description. From there, Unnerva would have gone off to the afterlife by herself. Then Allura would have said her goodbyes to everyone, including Lotor, and the scene in the edited episode where she says goodbye to Lance and somehow gives him Altean markings would have actually been her goodbye with Lotor. Aside from what I discussed in last month's video about a shot from their goodbye leaking online months before, and the timing and context implying that it was made at the same time as Shiro's last-minute wedding, Lance getting Altean markings makes no sense from a story perspective. Because not only is doing that something that's never even been hinted at as a possibility, but the show's own lore already established that those markings have a deeper significance to Altean culture, specifically being used as an indicator of which Alteans have the potential for magic. And Lance has no connection to that Altean cultural significance whatsoever, but Lotor already does. Season 5 established that Lotor already has Altean markings, they're just not visible except when they're lighting up to signify his potential to unlock Altean magical abilities. And when he took the trials to unlock his powers, Lotor failed the final test because he was too stuck in survival mode to consider anything being worth sacrificing his life over as the test required. But he's demonstrated in seasons 5 and 6 that he's willing to be that level of physically and emotionally vulnerable with Allura, regardless of how she may or may not feel about him. Indicating that while he wasn't willing to risk his life over anything when he attempted the trials in season 5, he would have passed the test at the end of season 8 and finally unlocked his dormant magical power because he was willing to make that sacrifice for Allura. Which all means that we're also missing Allura's actual goodbye with Lance. From there, Lotor would have most likely gone with Allura to restore all the realities that Unnerva destroyed. Because with the two of them both mastering the secrets of Oriond, they would be the only ones with the knowledge and power to fix what his mother broke. On top of that, when the edited version of the season released on Netflix, showrunner Lauren Montgomery urged fans to watch to the very end of the last episode, where viewers were treated to a shot of the Voltron Lions flying among the stars toward an obviously Allura-shaped nebula, which has a purple nebula behind her bright bluish-green that's slightly faded out, but still creates the impression of a figure sitting back-to-back with Allura among the stars. And given that the parts of the nebula representing Allura's white hair, a trait which Lotor also possesses, overlaps with that purple shape, there's no one else that could be in that nebula except for Lotor. Not to mention how the characters mention that the restoration of the multiverse magically brought back the destroyed homeworlds of both Allura and Lotor's peoples, but we only see Allura's home planet, with a statue of her prominently displayed outside the capital. And if she got one on the Altean home planet, Lotor being edited out of the season would explain why we never get to see the restored Galra homeworld Dibazal, because he would likely have his own statue there to match Allura's. With Season 8, Episode 12, The Zenith, being fully dedicated to the final battle and Allura and Lotor's goodbyes, Season 8, Episode 13, The End is the Beginning, would have been an entire episode dedicated to the aftermath, rather than cramming it all into the last 8 minutes. Similar to what the 2017 Netflix Castlevania series did with its final episode, we would have gotten to see more of the Paladins' lives after the war fully animated, instead of just getting slideshows at the end. Because there's no point in wasting what little budget the show had left on designing brand new outfits for the heroes that were only going to appear in a single shot. And unlike how the ending we got treated them both as dead, Allura and Lotor would have returned and reunited with everyone. Because Allura's departure was most likely supposed to represent not a sacrifice of her life, but an ascension to godhood. That she was meant to basically become the lion goddess that the Erusians revered her as all the way back in Season 1. So once all their work undoing Unnerva's damage to the multiverse was done, there should be nothing stopping her and Lotor from coming back to be with the people who care about them. And that would have explained why the Lions flew off at the end after the 1-year anniversary of the final battle, to bring them both back, which the showrunners hinted at for Allura in their 2019 interview with AfterBuzz. It's impossible for us to know for sure how close this is to what the original cut of the final seasons looked like unless either DreamWorks releases a director's cut of the last 2 seasons one day, or someone in the production team spills the tea once their NDAs finally expire. Whichever comes first, DreamWorks, hint hint wink wink. But this is the outline that I feel most closely aligns with the patterns and parallels that have been built up over the course of the series, and all the glaring discrepancies in the final season that point to missing or altered scenes. Thank you all so much for watching. I'd like to give a special shout out to my friends over at Team Purple Lion, whose work served as the basis for these videos, with most of the points discussed here coming directly from Leaking Hate's essays Chasing the Ghosts of Season 8 and Seek Truth in Darkness. But even beyond that, my channel wouldn't exist without them, because it was their research into the editing of Voltron's final season and their analysis of why its themes and parallels were meant to go in this direction, which inspired my own approach to Kingdom Hearts analysis. So thanks for everything, TPL. I wouldn't be where I am today without you guys. Like usual, if anyone has any thoughts, observations, or counter-arguments regarding anything I've said here in today's video, feel free to share in the comments below. And as always, if you want to be notified the next time I upload, be sure to click subscribe, and I'll see you all back here again on April 25th for my next video.